The Becoming Flame podcast broadcasts pure, unfiltered power exchange that stokes the flame of your being. Because it's time to remember. It's time to return. It's time to become flame. So today's episode is really talking to a particular kind of person. She is, or should I say, you are highly capable, independent, intelligent, motivated, successful, but you may have been living from this hyper capability, from this hyper resourcefulness, from this place where, because you are so capable and so able to execute on everything that you need, that it's become really hard either to ask for help or to receive it, or to even remember that that's an actual option. And you've probably become the person that everybody else is relying on, everybody else is asking for assistance from. And it becomes really exhausting. It becomes this chronic capability. And sometimes it shows up because you are the parentified child. Sometimes it shows up because you were not growing up in safety, not growing up in stability, not growing up in a environment where you knew that someone would be there to help you or guide you or assist you. And it doesn't necessarily always reflect an order of birth, but it mostly shows up in the eldest daughter. And it mostly shows up in this dynamic where a parent, specifically a mother, was unreliable, emotionally incapable of holding you. Maybe she was going through a lot of her own emotional trauma, or an addiction, or a health concern, or something that took her out of the capacity to provide safety, consistency, stability, and nurture for you. And a lot of the time what that does is it creates this hyper-independent, capable, and fully contained person. And the positive reinforcement that comes from that can often ingrain what are trauma responses and what are instability responses into traits and attributes that are celebrated because you make your mother's life easier. And that means you grow up to oftentimes attracting children as partners. So you are putting yourself in this eternal mother situation. So you mothered your mother, you mothered yourself, and now you're mothering your partner. And if you happen to go ahead and have children with that child, it can breed a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. And that oftentimes creates these cycles of abuse that come from you that don't seem like abuse because it's actually coming from emptiness. It's coming from this desperate need for support, for validation, for being understood, for being aided and partnered. And, you know, you have this really deep fatigue. And it's the kind of fatigue that no amount of sleep can really fulfill. You can sleep all day, you can sleep all night, you can sleep all weekend, you can take a retreat, for a couple of days, for a week, and you're still exhausted. Because it's a soul fatigue. It's this deep-seated anger and resentment and wrath for the situation you're in. And you might have a good and loving relationship with your now mother as an adult, where the expectation isn't that she takes care of you or provides safety for you. And you may have very limited understanding of the level of support that your mother needed when you were a child or a teenager. And so you might not feel direct resentment or anger or strain towards her. So you may see her day to day, but this feeling, this deeper anger that's held within the body at not being free, at having so many responsibilities, at being held accountable for people and things that were not your direct responsibilities, but that you assumed control and ownership over. And on the other hand, you might have a mother that remains just as incapable today as an elderly or an older woman as she was during your childhood. And maybe you've been carrying her your entire life. Maybe you are very acutely aware of the dynamic and its dysfunction and its fatiguing nature. Maybe there's a part of you that feels really validated and needed in that dynamic, in that codependency. Maybe there's a part of you that hates it and resents it, but there's another part of you that's like, yeah, I'm really needed here. And for others of you, yet, maybe you're still not even aware of that dynamic, but you have this uncontrolled, reactive anger that comes out at various points, unexplained and unassuming, out of nowhere. So these are really, really big traits, really big traumas, really big challenges. And why are we going into them today? Well, actually what happens is when your feminine system isn't available for receivership, for opening to ease, for allowing flow to move, for holding a creative vessel, and for activating your life force, eros energy, because of anger, because of over responsibility, over burdening yourself, hyper independence, hyper capability, pushing others away, seeing other people as a greater burdening of yourself, as a greater responsibility. What happens a lot of the time as well with parentified children, parentified eldest daughters, parentified daughters in general, is they then seek out those same dynamics in all relationships. So you'll often see the parentified daughter initiating relationship after relationship with a dependent, immature, I want to say man, but really it does feel like a child, like a boy. That boy, that man, can be capable in external facing attributes of his life. So he may have worked out money. He may have worked out asset allocation and asset accumulation. He may have his financial life worked out. He may have hobbies and friends and family life. He may have all of these things that at the surface or at the external window of him look mature and established and capable. And that's what first draws her in, because there's a part of her nervous system that is such, in such desperate need to be like, I just need to be held. I just need a rest. I need someone else to take care of me. I'm in such desperate longing to be held and, cuddled and taken care of for a while. I'm so tired. I need somebody else to take the reins. And so, when she's looking in the external windows of his life, oftentimes it's like, oh, he does look like he has it all together. But what you have to remember about the parentified child is that the child was not necessarily being asked to go out and earn the money to pay the rent or the mortgage, or to, at 10 years old, get a driver's license and drive siblings of parents around. So the work that she was being asked to do, the responsibility she was handed, was the emotional, spiritual, and mental holding. So when she sees this guy who's got his financial or his external or his physical life together, that doesn't necessarily mirror just yet the work that she was asked to do as a child. But we've made it believe ourselves through, Disney, the rest of it, whatever, that men take care of women materially. And so there's this disconnect a lot of the time where this parentified child who's exhausted, who's been taking care of everybody, who wants to be taken care of herself, ends up with this materially sound man who, as an internal landscape, is very stagnant, very stuck in childlike ways, deep emotional immaturity or lack of development around handling emotions, feeling emotions, reacting to emotions, and often, is really seeking out somebody to hold that for him, which gives her this initial sense of false, it's a false calibration to the false understanding of love that she was given as a child. So her mother couldn't hold her own emotions and was forcing that responsibility on her, and created this false identification of what love is. So now she meets him. She has this false sense that he can take care of her because he has financial capacity, financial means, a good job or a business or whatever it may be. He's outwardly very capable in terms of his physical expression and capacities in the world. And internally, he is void, immature, undeveloped, and in desperate need of that being held and managed for him. She mistakens that for the profile of love incorrectly given to her by her mother in childhood, and believes that she's found the perfect match because she's allowed now to have a role in this relationship that feels really important and really required. And she becomes this sense of emotional, spiritual holder, advisor, growth agent, i.e. mother, to her partner. And for an unhealed, parentified child who struggles to identify that this dynamic isn't love, she can feel really, really needed and really useful. And that gives her that same dopamine hit that her childhood usefulness gave her, where her utility is that which she's rewarded for, that which she's praised for. And so it's not real love. It's not unconditional love. It's very much conditioned upon the service that she's providing to either her mother, father, or now her partner. And that can function if the woman has enough energy, resources, to keep herself replenished and filled up, or, circulating enough energy where she's leaking a lot to him, but she's getting an abundant source from elsewhere. So where you see this really take a nuanced approach in so many highly sensitive women, empaths, women who have this incredible connection to whether they call it their higher self or source or God or even their girlfriends. They've got another source of energy that they're able to tap into and bring into themselves while they're leaking out all of this energy to him. And this can go undetected for a number of years. There might be some niggles of like, this doesn't seem, balanced or enough or whatever. But if he's also playing into the receiving of what she's giving and he doesn't want that to end, and he knows that, he needs to give something back to her in this dynamic, then most of his gifts would be material or physical, some kind of, spending time together in a superficial or, fun-based, easygoing way where, she gets out of the depths of herself. He brings her to the surface. He's like, we don't always have to, connect at a soul level. Sometimes we can just climb a mountain and have a lot of fun, or we can go surfing or go on a fun holiday, or and so he brings her to sort of not the surface of her in a bad way, but in a really good way, where he's like, come on, you got to just have fun and let loose and strip off the responsibilities and just actually be carefree for a day. And strangely, that feeds the deepest need of her to put down some of the heaviness that she's sort of been trained to take her entire life. And so, his sort of carefree, fun, live loose, live light kind of attitude is actually really refreshing for her and really energizing for her. And so she really loves that. She doesn't notice at first there's no substance to him, there's no emotional depth to him, because what she's feeling in his emotional depth is hers, because she's holding it for him. But what she's actually doing is leaking her own emotional depth where he is void. She's just feeling herself at that. So she's feeling her own wounding in him as his and saying, wow, we have the same wound here. We have the same connection here. And in many ways they do, right? Because his voidness is the same wound of not being taken care of deeply and considerately by his mother, but it manifests in voidness or avoidance or emptiness, or, this inability to go down into that pain and feel it and know it and actually allow it to thaw and be felt and to be alchemized into power. Hers is she feels it all. She ruminates in it. She sits in it. She, her basement is flooded with this stagnant emotional turmoil. And his is vacant. And so she fills his vacant basement with her turmoil, meets herself there. But as he tells, a little bit of his past, she's projecting that entire wounding archetype onto him, feels her own wounding in it, and knows, oh yes, he's just not feeling this, but it's there for him too. And so there's this toxic cycling of projection, avoidance, taking over the responsibility of his healing. And when he brings her up into that surface and he's like, let's just cut loose, let's just go on, a surf day or a party or a bender or whatever, she's given the day off from the responsibility of not only changing his life, but changing hers, changing her mother's, changing everything, and that feels really, really good. And then secondly, the other way that he can, keep feeding that energy source for her is through material gifts. So a lot of the time for these kinds of emotionally deep feeling women, material capacity is a struggle for them. And it can be that they don't really have any physical money coming into them, or that it's stop-start, or that she does have, but just not as much as him. And so this is where the dynamic can often play out over years. Now, this is not the dynamic for every single woman who is parentified, but this is a common one that we're just going to go into today. And so that's how this loops and hooks. It's like sometimes you can think of this guy as the super alpha male, which I always find is really interesting that in our society we have really idealized this emotionally vacant void man who can postulate and perform the charming prince type of providership and false safety and, the very two-dimensional Disney character type. And the contract often between this deeply emotional woman and this deeply avoidant man is he will provide materially and she will provide emotionally. And in many ways, we normalized and almost categorized this as the function of a healthy marriage for at least modern generations of women and men. And so the function of a woman was to provide the spiritual, emotional, and internal environment, and the function of a man in the relationship was to provide the external function of the relationship. And so it wasn't a requirement for men to develop their emotional landscape and capacity to process information, hold information, feel emotion, all of this kind of stuff. In the same way that it wasn't a requirement for a woman to go to university or get a job or make money or have a bank account or be able to buy a house. And so all we're doing right now is saying feminism has given an opportunity for women to move from the internal to the external, but that feminist movement hasn't impacted men to move from the external to the internal in quite the same way. It has had an impact, and we see men today more emotionally capable than they've been for generations. But we still know that there's a gap for, when we talk in averages, the average of all women has been this opening up to the external and the capacity to be a sovereign woman and to make their own money and to support themselves, whether that's through obligation and requirement or personal, volunteering desire. There has been that movement, and certainly for men that has been happening, but there are large pockets of men where that hasn't been affected or it hasn't been important. And so this is how this dynamic plays out. And so the parentified daughter often puts up with, because she has been entrained her entire childhood to believe that this dynamic is normal. This is what love is to her. She's supposed to take care of the emotional internal landscape of someone who she's closest to, whether that's both of her parents or just one of them. And so when she meets this guy, she is in the belief that this is the deepest love that she could give, that she feels safe in, and that she knows. And so what does this mean? How does this extrapolate out? Well, she might have children with this man, and all of a sudden the dynamic changes, because now she has to give to the little people who actually need her. And because she's not emotionally avoidant and she's able to show up emotionally and give and pour into other people all of herself, she's not creating that same dynamic from mother to daughter again, or mother to child again. And so, she doesn't have these children that are taking on her emotional burdens or her emotional internal landscape to be fully accountable for or take ownership of. So she's still very much in the ownership of her own internal emotional landscape. She's still probably holding it for her mother. And if the dynamic between her and this man hasn't changed, then she's probably holding it for him too. And if you add another child and however many children it takes until she just snaps. And what's interesting about this over-nurturing and this over-giving and this actual responsibility to take on the emotional wellness or the emotional management of other people is that it is an extremely toxic and unsovereign thing to do. Because even if you are not aware of yourself doing it, you are operating from a place of not only arrogance, and in some ways it could be even manipulation and control, but it is from a place of believing in your superiority over the other. Because if you allow somebody to actually make their mistakes, to actually develop their emotional capacities, to move through the karma into their dharma, to alchemize their pain into their, power, they might not do it the way that you do it. They might not do it on the timeline that you do it, but it is their work to do. And if you keep stepping in like an overprotective parent, what happens to that child? They never learn how to do it. They are completely and 100% dependent on you. And so that's where that other aspect comes in, is that you are an active participant in the codependency of that relationship, where the counterparty whose emotional capacity is zero or close to zero is dependent on you for all of their emotional processing. And then the cycle repeats. And so you're dependent on them to be needed, and they're dependent on you to have you needed. And so you're both caught in this very low energetic cycle where the energy that's circulating between you is only available from between the two of you. You're not tapped into any higher versions of self or universal codes or mechanics, quantum dynamics. You are not existing in the realm of potentiality and all that could be and all that you could evolve yourselves into. You are living in the realm of the karma that you've been given, not into the alchemical processing of that into a much higher existence, a much higher intelligence, and a more capable, self-fulfilling life structure. Also, in the dynamic of you're doing everything for another, that is not healthy feminine. That is not in any way tapped into your own life force, into your own eros, into your own sensuality, sexuality, or capability, creativity. Because if you were, you would have a deeply held understanding inside your body technology system that whatever somebody is born with is theirs to walk that path, to understand what it is, to come to deep clarity, understanding, and embodiment of that, to crack open into a bigger, higher, fuller potential for self. And in that way, when you are operating as the best version of you, the one that you came here to journey into, to become, to evolve as, that person actually benefits and impacts the world in such a positive way, in such a big way, that the smallest version of them has nothing in comparison to that. He who cannot understand his own emotional being means that he's outside of his body. He's not in it. And he's the masculine here. The masculine at this time has come to evolve just as much as the feminine has. And so, interestingly enough as well, that it's not a feminine trait to control. So this whole supposed overgiving mother energy is actually highly masculine because it's controlling, it's limiting, it's a toxic blend of toxic feminine and toxic masculine coming together to try to prove to other people that it's really, really caring. And here's the thing, when you're trying to prove to someone about anything, that can only be a toxic trait, because high positive impact never needs words to prove itself. It's felt immediately. A magnetic woman doesn't need to explain to you that she is or isn't magnetic, because she has no interest in you understanding it. It's not yours to understand. It's hers. And if you understand it, she salutes you and connects with you, and you have that connection to validate both of you understanding the magnetism that exists in each one of you. That understanding of, I have activated and live from my life force energy. I see you, I know you, I got you. But a woman who doesn't live from that way, she's talking all the time, trying to convince you that she does, trying to over-explain to you. Because a magnetic woman in her full life force energy, in the highest possible attainment of self that she has that day, knows that the next day there's a possibility for more, because in the field of potentiality and possibility, it is infinite. And she's not on that quest for self-healing in that hustle, desperate, clingy, grabby energy. She's doing it from curiosity. She's doing it from intrigue. She's so deeply curious about herself, about the universe, and about how her own function in the world reflects both the macro and the micro, and the understanding of how alchemy exists in the world can be fully understood by her own journey of alchemizing each and every day, another aspect. So she's not in any way talking, proving, convincing. And so that's a really good reflection point. If you're trying to justify to yourself right now why you're doing this or that, the other, to your husband, to your boyfriend, to your brother, your sister, your mother, your father, whoever, who are you trying to convince? And I think the opportunity to hear that voice inside of our head, the louder and the way that it talks. Because the higher the level of wisdom, the quieter it becomes until it's really not spoken at all. And sometimes the question really is at all, who is the voice? Because true wisdom has no words. It defies language. It's so much bigger than language. Where is the level of information that's coming to you? Because at the level of controlling, manipulating, pushing your agenda onto another, there's a lot of language for that. In fact, our entire culture. How many courses in the world exist for how to manipulate someone, how to convince somebody, how to sell to someone? They're all synonyms designed to make you feel that, oh, if I'm selling something to someone, that's okay. But if I control someone or manipulate something, that's bad. Convincing is convincing. And part of the way that we get into these dynamics, these codependent dynamics, is when we listen to somebody else's words. We listen and we believe that the words mean more than how we feel. And the invitation here to any woman who is deeply feeling, deeply emotive, truly in tune with the resonance in the room, with the emotional infliction of a voice, with the choice of words that mean this or that, or open up an entire library of somebody else's traumas, wounding, history, and you feel it all in the moment that they speak or the moment that they walk into the room. The opportunity is to know how your emotional connection, your emotional resonance, and the emotional attunement that you have to any individual on the planet actually makes impact in a positive way that shifts the axis of the world into a more positive place to live. And that can be a very powerful guiding compass. Because if the only skill that you have is to read and then service a codependent, emotionally avoidant, or even manipulative or abusive partner, whereby your energy is only drained or flooded into him to service him and his needs, all that does is deplete you down into nothing and stop you from serving the world in a magnificently abundant and impactful way. Now, I am not saying, and be very specific about this, I am not saying that you are not supposed to be here to love another person. But the foundation of what love is, what unconditional, two-directional, free and sovereign love that overflows in opulence and impact and value to all, that lifts the frequency of not only the two of you, but all of those around you, that actually blooms and services the world. If you're not in that love, you're not in love. You're in service. You're in controlled manipulation, guilt loops, and trauma bonds. And there's a part of you that has just worked out or just communicated to you what you already know about the relationship that you are in or the ones that you have been in. Because there's very different frequencies. You can feel it immediately when I speak about them. A love that is unconditional, pure, and has no strings and no requirements on you is amplification of your truest self in ease, joy, and love in a way that gives you energy, that powers you up, that makes you feel free, that makes you feel like you could do anything. And the anything that you often want to do is give that overflow out. And that is very different to I feel depleted, I feel scorned, I feel limp, I feel resentment, wrath, rage. Or most importantly, what mostly happens is I feel empty. I feel defeated. I don't even have the energy to think about my relationship because it's so draining. That's not love. That's in a service loop to somebody else's void that you have habitualized, normalized, and incorrectly named as love, as safety, and as peace. But it's not. Just because you've done something long enough doesn't mean that it's good for you. It just means it's familiar. And we often mistake familiarity with comfort. You're not comfortable. You're not comfortable being drained of your life force energy every single day. So if you don't have life force energy in your body and you're giving it out to other people, you can't create. There's no available resource for you anymore. It's not available because you've given it out. So what do? If this is you or if you know somebody that's like this, and even if it's not your primary relationship, just take one moment at this moment and just do a life audit. Is there anyone, anywhere in the periphery, in the secondary column, in the third, where in my life have I allowed, supported, and even sustained relationships that deplete me, that leave me empty? And start becoming extremely aware that during these interactions, do you walk away and feel like you need to lie down? That you need to fill up? That you walked away depleted and not energized? Or do you walk away from your your friends, your family, your girlfriends, your partner, your children, thinking, oh my God, I can do anything. I can do anything. This is great. And you feel like you are, tapped into enormous resources. Now, here's the clinger. Because you want to make sure that this is a healthy, sovereign source of energy and that you are not the taker. Because, and there's a reason for this, you don't want to be a taker. Just like you don't want to be an overgiver where nothing, cycles back to you. Equally, you don't want to be a taker and store other people's energy. Why? Because here's the second part of the assessment. Do you walk away from the other people and go, oh my God, I could do anything. This is so exciting, so exciting. And then you have all of these ideas that don't really align to you, or you feel a little bit off, a little bit out of your center. And then like maybe a couple of hours later or a day later, or even like just some short amount of immediate time later, do you feel really tired again? Do you have muscle pains or body stiffness, or like these feelings that you've got like itchiness or like something stuck in you? Do you feel like you've like come down with something or been infected by something? Do you feel like you're bloated or, just like not yourself? Like it's not, like you feel really full but you didn't eat anything kind of stuff. That can be a really good sign that you've accidentally taken energy from another, or that they've accidentally dumped into you without your permission. So boundaries in terms of your energetics and what you receive, they're very clear and very sovereign way to set up your energy fortification, and the sources through which you get your own energy are and must only be twofold. That from your eros, that from your life force, that from your pelvis. So, people call it kundalini, people call it life force, eros, sexual power. You can generate that yourself, and we'll have a different episode to go into those specific techniques. But that which is coming from your general womb space, pelvis space, that part of your body. Some people also access energy from their heart center or from, their crown chakra or in Taurus energy field. That's yours, right? That's yours. You need to learn how you generate, circulate, and meticulously clean and purify your own energy field. If you have really, really unclear energy, really fuzzy, really contaminated, you have no idea when something is yours or when something is somebody else's. You have no idea how to exit the drama, how to exit the chaos, how to exit the fuzziness that is around you, because you've been living in fuzziness. Now, if you are a person who is constantly and consistently over years, decades even, taken on other people's emotional burdens, baggages, and difficulties, process them as if they were your own, and then gave back somebody, whether it's general energy or a processed, purified, solution to their energy baggage, you are going to really struggle with understanding what is yours to hold and to purify, to alchemize, to live with, and what is yours to leave. It's not kindness. It's really not. It's not kindness to take away somebody else's burden. And I don't say that lightly, because you are kind. That's the difference, right? These women who are so deeply feeling, who are these bleeding hearts, who love humanity and who love the people in their lives. You taking on and cleaning out somebody else's emotional basement is not kindness. It's control. It's manipulation. It's codependency. And it's arrogant. It comes from an emotional or spiritual superiority or arrogance that you can do it better than them. They didn't ask you. And if they did, you must commence kind refusal. You must start to realize that the greatest kindness that you can give to another is the facilitation and support that you can provide for them to solve their own emotional issues, for them to feel their own pain. Why are you allowed to feel yours and they are not allowed to feel theirs? They will never grow up. They will never mature, and they will never develop resilience or capacity if you do it for them. And the problem a lot of the time is that people only get to this point that I'm saying in a complete meltdown, burnout, or blow up. But if you could come to a point of awareness about the ways in which you were asked to burden yourself with other people's emotions and life responsibilities as a child without being asked and without being consulted, you were thrust into that position and you did that task and you equated that responsibility and that capacity to perform that task for a significant person, such as a parent or someone significant in your life. The first step right now is to feel deeply in your body. Just take a moment. I know it's a podcast and you're probably doing 1,000 other things, but just in this moment, change your life and see, feel, or just know, or just declare, that's not love. That's no longer mine to hold. And receive this purification. In this moment, you become your own healer. You become your own guru. You become your own therapist. And you see that what was done to you as a child was wrong, was incorrect, and created incorrect imprints for what is love. And you forgive yourself. You forgive yourself for the misunderstanding because you were just a child. You didn't know. But you know now. And you know you don't want that now. If you have come to a conclusion that this is no longer available for you and you did it in a blow up or a blowout or a meltdown or a, pretty drastic, dramatic way, there's forgiveness available for you there too. Because sometimes the only way we can see this is for it to have gotten so big and so impossible to solve any other way. And so just feel yourself letting that go, that burden, that guilt, that shame, that heaviness that you've been holding. Literally bring it outside of your body with your command, your willingness. Just a deep breath can sometimes move these things. You might start involuntarily moving your body. That's always a really good sign for me that something shifted or moved, because my body wants to somatically shift any, remaining imprints. And just follow follow that desire, follow that intuitive response. Your body has so much wisdom and it's working with you all the time. And if you're available to, in this moment, extend forgiveness to the authority figure that asked you to take on the burdens of their own life, and that burden and the relationship that ensued after gave you the impression that you were being rewarded for your service with love, and that love became an extremely transactional, service-based relationship dynamic where you yourself were not enough, but what you did was. And now as your adult self, understand that that's not true. Love is not dependent on what you do, what you can provide, or how you perform. And if you find some connection to an ultimate mother, whether you call that the earth, Gaia, universal mother, whatever your word is for that, this unconditional mother energy. And you can start to feel that just your existence, just your being is enough and more than enough to receive unconditional love. And you needn't do a single thing, perform a single song, dance routine, one-arm juggling, nothing. It's yours. There is no barrier to access it. There is no course to take. You do not need to download my $7 masterclass. It's just yours. And she's been here all along. And working with this mother energy and really raising yourself in this every single day. Sitting down 1 or 2 minutes. Because in this space there is no time. It's infinitely available. And so even if you only have 1 or 2 minutes in 3D reality and this version of your reality of where you believe you are, there's a version of you that is infinitely in connection with your universal mother and unconditional love. And the more time that you can attune to that, the more that you can bring that frequency and that memory and that patterning into your body, into your mind, into your consciousness, and into your field. And when that patterning and that consciousness and that biological makeup is aware of your 3D reality as much as you are aware of it, things can start to rewire and reshift. And over time, with practice and daily effort and attunement to that, a lot of the patterns that you have been stuck in or habituating over and over and over and over again will start to just fall away and have less control and less power over you. So these are really powerful practices. But you know what's really kind of annoying about them is that they are so accessible and they are so simple. Why is that annoying? Because it all comes down to your willingness and your choice to show up in this new energy, in this new way, as this new you. And so you have no one to blame or hold accountable than you. You can no longer hold the child parent or the child husband or the child mother or the child. They're not any longer going to have control over the outcomes of your life. The victim must die. But the bigger part of you and the part that knows the superpower of your emotional capacities wants that victim to die so that you can actually unleash the incredible capacity that it is to feel. It is so beautiful to feel the world as you do. But if it's only ever been to service another and to fill an unfillable void for them, you won't see it as a superpower. You will see it as just a continuous drain, burden, chore, and an unfillable and unending quest to make somebody else happy who is inherently incapable of happiness. So as you connect with the unconditional love of the mother figure that you yourself are longing for, and you mother yourself and you fill yourself with that mothering, and your nervous system starts to calm down and repattern, and calibrations are made as to what is love and what isn't love, what is true and what isn't true, then life will start to look very differently. Yeah. Well, good luck with this, and please DM me or email for any other questions, comments, if you want to go deeper into these practices, whatever it may be. This is so exciting for me to finally, sit down and record these lessons and these processes that I've been doing for close to 20 years now. And they won't change your life tomorrow. But you will get to a point where you look back at your life and it will be hard to remember how you got here, but you'll be so glad that you did. All right, lots of love and speak soon.